Hey guys, welcome back to the BroBryce64 channel. My name is Bryce L. Tomlinson, and I am the author of Kaleidoscope version 4, which is a PETSCII editor from 1989. I wrote it way back then, and I started writing it actually when I was much younger. When I was like 13, I started writing a program called Message Master, which was originally a graphic editor, like PETSCII editor, and then it had a terminal program. And the terminal program was modeled after CCGMS, if you guys, a lot of you guys know, the Commodore guys know. And then it had a message editor that was largely based on the Color64 BBS message editor by Greg Founce. And today I wanted to show you my program, Kaleidoscope Reloaded. I'm going to do a video on the history of Kaleidoscope at another time, but I want to give you a fair warning. This is going to be a pretty long video because the content that's in the program, it's a pretty broad program for PETSCII editor, and I wanted to cover everything. You could use this to serve as documentation. There will be documentation on the disk, which I'll talk about in a moment. But just fair warning, this will be a complete walkthrough of the program. So if you don't have time right now, save this video for a little bit later, come back to it and watch the whole thing all the way through. Just watching a piece of it, you're probably going to miss something. So let's take a look at the disk. This is the directory listing right here. We're looking at the real Commodore 64. Here we have the KS409R, which is the current revision that I'm working with. Fixed a lot of bugs since the last release. And hopefully you beta testers are looking out for bugs. So we have the reader and the docs. So the reader, the docs are just a sequential file. The reader will read the file out to 40 columns. It'll word wrap the file out to 40 columns on a regular screen. Or if you like, it will also print out to a Commodore printer if you have one of those hooked up. This file size is going to change because I'm revisiting the documentation to reflect the new changes for the program, which you're going to see in this video. Kaleidoscope Animator is a little animation program. I'm not going to show that program particularly on this video. I'll do another video some other time probably about it. But Kaleidoscope Animator was made back in the day when people were using CCGMS's buffer, its terminal program's buffer, to do PETSCII animations, and they would add in their graphics that they'd made from Kaleidoscope or other graphics programs, and they would make them animate. And so it's really geared more for animation and than CCGMS's buffer. So you get a few more kind of pimped out features. And so then you have, underneath that, you have Macro Maker, which is sort of a companion program for Kaleidoscope Animator and Kaleidoscope 4. And what it does is, normally when you store your graphics in Kaleidoscope, it'll do like a line, then a carriage return, then a line, then a carriage return, then a line, then a carriage return. Well, what Macro Maker does is it makes it so it goes a line, and then it uses cursor movements to move back to the beginning of the next line, and then a line, and then a cursor movements, line, cursor movements, line, cursor movements. The effect of which is now you can take that little chunk of graphics and you can move your cursor up here, and then it will draw the thing with the cursor movements, or you can move your cursor down here and it will draw the thing with the cursor movements. You can take your graphics and move them anywhere you want to and animate them in that nature. So that's what Macro Maker is. That's a quick explanation. Just give it a try and experiment with it. Anim Doc Reader is the documentation program for the animator docs. Of course, you can take these sequential files and you can export them and look at them in your word processor if you want to. Then underneath that, we have a couple of files here from Kaleidoscope Animator. These are not just files that you can just load willy-nilly into Kaleidoscope. They work with the animator, or you can read them with the sequential file reader. I'll show you that in a little bit. But these are animation files, so don't expect them to load perfectly into Kaleidoscope. They're animations. So you have Tetris, and then you have Snowball Fight. And these are from the original 1989 disc. And I know that a lot of you guys already have the 1989 disc, but I'm finding more and more that a lot of you guys have not explored most of what's on the disc. It's surprising. Then down here we have Computer 1 GFX, Computer 2 GFX. These are clip art files on the disc. There's a number of clip art files included on the disc. So I'll show you those here. We have, and the computer ones are just computer related things. Keys is like little PETSCII versions of like the Commodore keys. Then you have miscellaneous 1, miscellaneous 2, miscellaneous 3. These are kind of a hodgepodge of different kinds of miscellaneous clip art. Then people.gfx is actual graphics of just some people. There's some guys in there. Then there's some fonts. So these bubble.fnt, that's a font. There's C64 text, which is modeled after the Commodore 64's character set. Curly, newsprint, plain, shadow, and ultra. You can experiment with these, and I'm going to show you how those work in just a little bit. So there's the font files. Just remember that the fonts end in .fnt, the graphics end in .gfx. They're just sequential files. You can load them in any way you like, but specifically so that you know the file names, look for .gfx and .fnt. So without further ado, let's load the program. So I'm going to load star, 8. We'll run this baby right on. And it decrunches. It's all crunched up like before. You'll notice that the program is about 65 blocks, whereas the old version in 1989 was 83 blocks. Now it goes to the main editor screen, and that intro screen you can bypass by hitting the space bar. This is the main menu, and you have the editor side over on the left side, then you have the buffer side on the right side. These are two separate sections. So the editor has its own little buffer, and then the buffer is this 75 line buffer. So a lot of people said, well, why can't I edit more than 23 lines in Kaleidoscope? Well, if you want to edit a longer message, you can move stuff over into the buffer, move things in and out of the buffer, and I'm going to show you that and how that works in just a little while. But let's get into the editor side here first. We have the edit function, which of course is just going to drop you into the graphics editor where you can start making fun graphics and stuff. You have load, kind of self-explanatory, loads from disk or tape. Kaleidoscope always supported the tape drive because the original reason why I wrote the program in the first place was because there wasn't a program out that supported tape, and that's all I had. So the load and save functions on this program all support disk and tape, and I'll show you how you can make that just a little less annoying if you don't want to be asked disk or tape all the time. So there's load function, there's exfer, which is transfer, and transfer is for interaction between the editor side and the buffer side. So when you want to move stuff back and forth between the buffer and the editor, you use the exfer. So the next function underneath that is append, and that means append to disk. So say you want to have something that's longer than 23 lines, it's maybe longer than the 75 line buffer. Maybe you want to have something that's 100 or more lines on the disk. You can just append what you have onto the disk, and that will create a bigger file. And I'll show you that in just a little bit. I for import. Now that's that new function that I was just talking about from Alterus. He came up with this idea when he showed me that Kaleidoscope wasn't able to load some of the 40 column graphics from some of the graphics editors that are out there. So if you have files that are made with other programs that don't use carriage returns at the ends of the lines, Kaleidoscope is going to screw them up when it goes to edit them. So what you would do is you would load them in with the import function, which I'll show you in just a little bit. Okay, and I'll show you why you want to use that too, because it'll mess up stuff. Then over here on the right side of the editor window, it says redo. That's just to wipe out what you have in your editor and start from scratch. So that's just a great way to just start over from scratch. It's like the edit button. It just gives you the ability to wipe everything out on your way in. Then you have the S key for save, which of course is kind of self-explanatory. Saves to disk or tape. Then you have display, which is D, and that just displays what you have in the editor side onto your screen. And now over here on the buffer side, you have again the A for append. That's Control A. You notice down at the bottom of that row there, it says the up arrow means Control plus. So you have the Control A is append. Then you have Control L for load from disk or tape. Control S for save. And then Control D for display. And I'm going to go through all of these features with you. Down at the bottom here, we have the directory. So if you hit the $, you will get a directory of the disk, just like any other program. When you're done, you can hit return. The directory and many other places that have scrolling to them, you can use the space bar to pause, and you can use the run stop to break. Run stop to abort is all throughout the program. You're going to see it over and over. And then on the right side of the bottom, you have the DOS menu over there. So you hit the @ and again, you can access the directory from here. And there's one other place in the edit menu, which you're going to see in a little bit. And then here you have the DOS command on the right side. And the DOS command is just to enter DOS command straight to the drive. So like the I command would initialize the drive, I : would initialize the drive. So like if you switch disks or something, you want to detect a disk change, or you want to reset the drive for whatever reason. You can use the V : to cause it to validate the drive's BAM, so the block allocation map. Like say you've got a splat file on there with a little asterisk on it, the V will often get rid of those things and clean up the BAM. Then you can, and I recommend that you read up like a DOS manual on this if you want to learn how these work. N : disk name, ID. That would be the way that you would create format a new disk. So don't format the Kaleidoscope disk, right? An ID can be any 2 letters or numbers or whatever. And if you want to scratch a file, delete a file off the disk, S : file name. And it does accept wildcards, so you can go file *, but just know for sure what your file name is before you do that. And you can rename a file using R : new name equals old name. So those are just a few general widely used DOS commands. If you just hit enter, it's just going to give you the status of the drive, which is okay right now. Then you have read file, and so here's where I'm going to show you one of the animation files. And so we're going to read a sequential file. This will read program files too. So if you have like a graphics file that's made with another program that's stored in a program format, it will read that too. The file name to read, I'm going to read that snowball fight. And it gives you space to pause, run stop to abort. And this is just a little animation that I made in Kaleidoscope Animator and Kaleidoscope 4 back in the day. A couple little kids having a snowball fight. Oh, it's a snowball. And it's coming right at me. Boom. Smacks him in the face. And he flies off the screen. Man, that's gotta hurt. Flying off the screen. The process of elimination. And the kid giggles. So I made that in 1990. All right, so that's just an example of reading a file off the disk. And then you have two more functions before we leave the DOS menu, and the two of them sort of seem like they might be kind of the same, right? You have the number sign here, which is to change which drive you're currently using. So you can use drive number 8 through 11. Say you loaded your disk from drive 8, but you want to store your data. Loud phone. I tried to turn off everything. You try to store all your data on drive 9. So you would use that to temporarily change the device number. Now, Kaleidoscope defaults to using the last device used. So like if you loaded off of tape, it would use the tape drive by default. If you use device 8, it's going to use device 8 by default when you load it. That's just the default settings. But you can also, I'm just going to enter 8 there. You can also change the device sort of permanently. And here's how you would do that. These two items are not exactly the same, so it requires some explanation. Change the default device? Yes. Which device do I want to use? So from here, I can tell it that I want to kind of permanently use device 8, or let's say I always want to load off of device 9 or device 8, but I want to store my data files on device 9. I can tell it that I want to use device 9. And then what it's going to do temporarily is it's going to tell me to insert the Kaleidoscope disk into whatever drive that I'm telling it to use and hit return. And then I'll show you that it adds a new file to the disk in just a moment here. So let's look at that directory again. And down here in the bottom, you now see Kaleid.dd. Kaleid.dd is the default device. So if you were to read that, which we'll just read it, it's real simple, nothing special about it. It just says 8. That's it. It's the default device. And if you wanted to remove that, which I will temporarily, you can just type in s::kaleid.dd. And then it's going to erase the file from the disk and give you the status. And then that file will be removed from the disk. So have a look, it's no longer there. Now, so that's kind of an overview of the DOS utility in Kaleidoscope 4. Hit return to abort out of there. And now let's get into the fun. So we have the editor, which when you first go into it, this is one of the first things that you'll see that's changed. There's two things that you should see that are changed from the old 1989 version, which I'll just call the 1989 version. For one thing, it doesn't ask you, do you want to edit from scratch or anything else? It just drops you right into the editor, because when you first run the program, you don't have anything in memory. If you're going to create graphics, if you're going to edit graphics, of course, you're going to be editing from scratch. So it just takes you right into the editor. And you can abort from here if you change your mind, but it's kind of silly to ask you if you want to edit from scratch when that's really the only option. So it now just drops you right into the editor. Then the next thing you'll notice is that blinking cursor. It blinks. It didn't used to blink, never blinked before version Reloaded. So Kaleidoscope Reloaded now has a blinking cursor. Not a huge deal, but it's kind of helpful when you want to see what is actually underneath the cursor. So it's kind of helpful. So with that, let's get right into what you see here. Of course, you know, this is just an editor window, so you can just start making some graphics here and doing what you does. And not quite. It's maybe not the prettiest thing ever, but it's a bee, right? Sort of. So you have some hotkeys down here to do some special things. You notice at the bottom it says F1 to store, F7 for help. Let's look at the help screen here. So the help screen is a little fancier than the old one. So you have F1 to store, that's the same thing that you just saw there. This is all the hotkeys for edit mode, okay? These are just when you're typing in edit mode, these are the hotkeys. You have F2 for a character map, which you're going to see that in just a little bit. F3 to undo. You have F4 to set or clear a tab. F5 to use that tab to tab over. And F6 to abort the editor. Then you have, of course, F7 for help, and F8 is rainbow toggle. Then you also have over there is a new hotkey that just came out, and that is thanks to Stiggity99, the toggle key repeat. That's for people who are annoyed with the constant key repeat in edit mode. So you can turn the key repeat on and off, and it will save it for the entire time that you're using Kaleidoscope. You have to reset it again next time you boot up Kaleidoscope. Maybe we'll have some sort of save settings function in Kaleidoscope 5, but we'll get into that later. The other hotkey that's new is that F2 character map, and that's thanks to Chris537 for bringing up the idea for the character map. I wanted to have something where we could look at a symbol table and we could pick a character that we want to put on the screen. So let's try that out, right? That's a new thing. Let's hit return and let's go over here. So let's say that I'm kind of new with the keyboard and I don't really know my way around. I can hit F2 and it brings up this character map. Oh, that's kind of handy. Now I can see all these different graphics and what they're made of. And there's that little corner thing. I'll put that there, right? So it just puts it at the current cursor position. And it's kind of a long way to draw, but let's kind of do that for a minute. Let's see, find that middle line, huh? Oh, there it is. Oh, that's up at the top of the screen now. Let's move down here. And so that just gives you the idea. You can use these reverse characters as well. It does it in the current color. So let's change it to, say, green. And we'll bring up like a reverse green $sign. So it does it in the current cursor color right at the current cursor position. So that's kind of handy. But let's say I want to draw the rest of these letters. So let's get into some of the more fancy stuff. Let's do that in just a second. Let's explore the rest of these hotkeys again. So we have the tab stops. And so let's go over here and set a tab for F4. And you look down at the very bottom of the screen, you see a little red up arrow sticking up there. Everywhere that you tab to, or everywhere you set a tab, it will either put one or take it away. It just toggles it. The tab stops. Oops, typo. And so now we have a couple tab stops there, and if we hit F5, it just tabs to the next tab stop or the end of the screen, and then it just tabs over. You can hit F5 to tab to the next tab stop. And this is for people who want to have stuff that's kind of page aligned, you know, menus and boxes and things that require some amount of alignment. So we'll maybe find some stuff that we can use that with a little later. But that's something that you can know. You can have tab stops for setting up your menus and stuff. And then we have F3 to undo. So let's do some stuff. We'll just make some damage here. Yeah, I don't like that. I messed up my picture. So we'll hit F3. And it asks you F3 again to confirm. Now this is something else that's changed. The original version didn't have this little confirmation thing. It made you hit it twice, but a lot of times, including myself, I just thought my keyboard was sticky. I'd hit F3 and it didn't do it. I'd hit F3 again and it would do it. Now it asks you to confirm. So you can either just keep typing, or you can hit F3 again and actually it will undo all that damage. So that's how that works. And let's look at that help screen again. Let's look at rainbow toggle. Okay. And rainbow toggle basically turns on rainbow mode. This is the old Color 64 rainbow mode. So it just cycles through all the colors. Right? And it's not terribly elegant, but some people find it useful and a lot of people wanted it, so I put it in there. In Kaleidoscope 5, we're talking about making custom patterns for making it so that the user can make their own custom patterns for the rainbow mode as well. So that's something to think about. Now, I want to make some graphics here, okay? And I don't want to spell my whole name using just drawing the letters one by one. So let's take a little shortcut. Right here in the middle of the screen here, I'm going to kind of go out of order for just a moment here. There's the copy function right there in the middle, and hit C for copy, and now it brings you to this screen, and you can hit return on one corner and then hit it again on another corner, and now you are in something called stamp mode. So in copy, it just grabs it and now you can paste it somewhere else. You can hit enter a number of times, and I'm going to do it 6 times because there's 5 letters in Bryce. From here, I can say F1 to exit, F3 to undo, space is the mode, which we'll do that in just a second, and return is paste, just like I just did, right? But let's say I don't like all those B's. I'm going to hit F3 to undo, and it just goes back to the way it was before I started. So I'm going to make, again, 6 of these things. And let's look at the mode thing, okay? So mode has another function here. So you hit space and it changes mode. Doesn't look like it changed anything, right? But now what happens is the empty spaces in this letter B are now being filled by what's behind it. So that's called overlay mode. And then if you hit space again, it goes into underlay mode, and now it is floating underneath whatever it is that you have there on the screen. So the empty spaces in your background are now filled in by whatever your stamp is. Let's hit F1 to exit. At any point you can stamp this again using the enter key. And I'm just going to hit F1 to exit. Is it okay? Yes or no? Yes. And I go on to the edit menu. No. And it undoes it, and then it goes on to the edit menu. But I'm going to say yes, I like it. And then I'm going to use another little function here that's in the bottom left here, erase. So erase is Control E. And again, I can start at any corner and go to the opposite corner. The selection window is also changed. You notice that it's no longer just the 4 little corners. It's actually a reversed area. And it also wraps around, so there's shortcuts. So if you wanted to move all the way to the opposite corner of the screen, just move to the opposite corner there, and it will wrap around. So there's some shortcuts that are handy there. And I'm just going to hit enter or return. And again, I can use run stop to abort this at any moment, and it will just take me right back to the menu. Or I can hit Control E and do it again. Hit return, and boom, it erases that whole thing instantly, as opposed to the old version, which would take forever to kind of poke empty spaces into that area. And the reason for that is, again, we're using Jeff Hoag's Windfill, And you can give him props for speeding up a lot of the program with his great routines that he put into the ML. And by the way, that ML was specifically written to accommodate for Kaleidoscope 5. So much of the frilly features that are going to be in Kaleidoscope 5 are already written. So you can enjoy those right now, most of them. Yes, I like this. That's okay. And now I want to edit that and kind of make it into a thing. So you notice the rainbow mode's still on. I'll hit F8 to turn that off. Let's go back to white using my hotkey there. And I'm going to make this an R. And I like serifs. So let's do some serifs, right? There we go. The R, and this one's totally wrong. At least I don't have to draw the whole thing from scratch. There we go. It saved me a lot of time, you know, copying all these over, and this is how I end up making a lot of my typefaces. And to make an E, all I gotta do is erase some of that right row there. So there I got the word Bryce, right? And I had to draw a lot of that by hand, so maybe there's a better way to do that, right? I mean, there's gotta be a better way. So let's look over here on the top middle here. In the top middle, there is a function called merge. And up in the top is really kind of like what happens from the disk stuff. And then the blue section in the middle is all sort of like all the stuff that happens, all these editor effects. So the top one is, the top middle one is called merge. And that is to merge stuff in from the disk. So let's say that we want to use, I don't know, shadow.fnt, which is one of those fonts that I showed you earlier on the disk. And it brings you to this screen. So space to scroll, F1 to merge. And the merge function is much, much faster. All the disk access stuff is much faster due to some new stuff that I discovered in programming this version. And as you're scrolling, and when it scrolls, it'll be much faster too. This particular file doesn't actually have more than a screen full. But there we go. Once we get our stuff on the screen, we can either hit F1 when we see the thing that we like, or we can let it scroll with the space bar. In this case, it reached the end of the file. So I'm going to hit enter and grab that, and you see it just switches screens automatically. So now I'm going to put this B here, and I could stamp it again as many times as I want. I can overlay it. I can underlay it just like before. I can do all these same techniques with the merge function that I can do with that, with the copy function. So from here, I'm just going to hit F1 again. It's okay, yes. And no, I'm not all done because I want to grab some more stuff. So N for no. And I'm going to go over here and grab the R. And the cursor wraps around. So B, R, F1, yes, no. And this way you can kind of get used to your hotkeys and start really flowing through the program rapidly. And get that Y in place, F1, yes, no. You can see that it doesn't take long to really kind of get into a groove, and you can actually start moving a lot faster. Hit the C, F1, yes, no, and let's do the E key. There we go. We can just copy that E character right there, F1, yes. And you know what? No, I'm not all done. I want to make an exclamation point. This one doesn't have it, but I'll just steal this and we'll make it into one. So F1, yes, and yes, I'm all done. So I'm going to go in here and edit that, and we'll make that into an exclamation point. boop, and boop. And just using keyboard graphics, people. There we go. So now I've got my exclamation point there. And that's pretty cool, but well, you know, let's fancy things up a little bit. So now let's sort of explore some of the other options that are here. We have the B for background, and what this does, sometimes I like to put a background behind stuff to sort of make it pop or make it set apart from where, you know, just the black background. And so let's try that. So B for background, and let's try making a like a light gray percentage sign, right? And what it's going to do is it's going to again use that same wind fill routine that that I showed you earlier with the erase, and it fills it in instantly as opposed to having to take time to poke it across the screen. And you know, that's kind of obnoxious and kind of loud. I think I'm going to go with something a little different. So yeah, no, it's not okay. I just did that. No. So we can just go over that again. We can take and use the character seek, which is over on the right side, and we're going to take and make percentage signs into spaces. And so we'll just go over here and we will selectively erase the percentage signs. Isn't that amazing? Check that out. Yes, that's totally okay. And let's do that background again. I want to do a dark gray period. I used to use this a lot to sort of, I guess it was kind of an 80s stylized kind of thing that I did back then. And this kind of sets something apart from the background. I like that one. And yeah, that's okay. But we noticed that in here in the middle, there are some characters that showed up inside the graphics. I think that's it. So these ones here are fine. Let's look at the border here. And that's Control B, which is the second thing on the left side there. Control B for border. And I'm going to make this a little bit showy, so like a big yellow dot of borders, and this will be like, you know, those starlit mirrors with the, you know, like a vanity mirror with light bulbs around the sides. So it's just the idea that I have in mind here. I will make that happen instantly. And you notice that, like the old one, it used to, you could watch it poke across a screen, and now it just happens instantly. Again, using that wind fill and the stamp routine to overlay it on top. So that's kind of cool, but I want to change the color of my lettering. I like that. It's okay. Let's get rid of this other thing. We have the fill option. Fill is the F key, and with that, I'm going to fill in an area entirely with green dollar signs, because I love dollar signs for some reason. Not that I have very many of them. Just fill in that whole area. There we go. I'm not very egocentric, but I guess I'm a little greedy. So there we go. We have the dollar signs there. Yeah, I like that okay. And let's say that I want them to stand out a little more, and I want to reverse them, turn them inside out. We can use the R key for reverse. And let's take the center section here, and we'll make it like a dollar bill, sort of. Boom, like that. Monopoly money, look at that. And it turns them reverse. So any characters that you have, it will reverse them, just like when you see that selection window. It's using the same effect. Yes, that's okay. And then we've already explored the erase, which is down below that. And then we've already explored copy, which is above that. Now let's try the move. Move. I'm going to grab this thing and I want to move it right here. Get it centered there. There we go. And yeah. And you notice that it erased the old one. So we'll do that again and we'll center this whole thing. And it will instantly erase everything that was there before, as opposed to the slow, tedious way that it did it before. It just instantly erases it, and now you can immediately start moving. And you also notice that it starts the stamp routine right where you were, as opposed to starting at the top left corner of the screen like it used to. It always starts right where you left off. F1, yes, that's okay. And now, let's take a look at one of the fancier functions, and one of the favorite functions of Kaleidoscope that, at least at the time, nobody else did. Nobody else had even thought about it, because it's like there's so many characters that won't flip left and right or up and down. But when we did it, and that was the main argument I had against doing the mirror function, but in the end, when I did it, I was so thankful that I did, because there's so many characters in the PETSCII character set that do flip. It's so worth it. It's such a time saver. So let's experiment with that. Use the left arrow, and then let's flip something upside down, up and down. And we'll just grab what's inside here and flip it upside down. Look at that. Instantly, it just flips it. You notice how instant that is? That's Jeff Hogue again right there. He wrote his own mirror routine within the machine language stuff in the assembly, and he replaced the basic one that we had. Now, the basic one worked fine. It was just really slow and very tedious. So the new one is bam, instant, just like that. And at some point, I had slaved away on rewriting the mirror routine, and then he comes along and does this, and I was like, I'm not even gonna work on that part anymore. You killed it. So there it is. It flips it upside down instantly. Yeah. Now here's the other thing that you'll notice that's changed. There used to be two functions that would flip things, and there was one called invert and there was one called mirror. Now invert, what it would do is it just flip it upside down or left and right, and then it would ask you, okay, yes or no. Just flip it right in place. It wouldn't move it around or nothing. It just flip it right in place, and it would ask you, okay, yes or no. And then you had the mirror function, which would flip it, and then it would bring you into stamp mode, and now you're stamping, stamping, stamping. So the need for those things, those two things that seem to do pretty much the same thing, to be separate is sort of, Now originally the invert function was created by request, because Captain Kenby said, well, what if I just want to flip something and I don't want to move it? I'm annoyed that I have to move it into place and stamp it to do that. So I created that extra feature, and I really didn't, we didn't have like a standard operating procedure for graphic user interfaces or anything back then. So, I didn't think much of it. So now we do, and I kind of have a better idea how I would like stuff to flow, because I've used other programs that do things. And so, here I'm going to do that. So what I've done is I sort of slipstream the invert function into the mirror function. So you have the exact same number of keystrokes. You're not gaining or losing keystrokes. So you can either go, okay, yes or no, I like it right where it is, flip it, yes. Or I can say no and abort right there, or I can begin moving it with the cursor. So as soon as I start moving it with the cursor, it's now moving from the place where it left off. Now, one of the reasons why I like Jeff's code so much for the stamp routine is, one, it's way faster than the old stamp routine, and two, it allows me the control to start the stamp right where we had it. As opposed to the old stamp routine, which was always starting up at the top left corner. Now, God bless Eric, because, man, I love that code back in the day. It was so revolutionary. The idea that it could do what it did, which it always wows an audience when I present that program. But Still, this is way better. So yeah, now it's flipped upside down, and I can, I'll just stamp it right up here. Yeah, I like that. Okay, now let's mirror that left and right. And left and right, 1. I'll do the same thing, just select, well, you know what? Let's hit run stop and we'll start that over. We're gonna flip the whole thing left and right. There we go, look at that. We got upside down backwards ones, right? You know what? No. I'm going to say no, and it'll flip it right back. If I don't like it, I don't have to live with it. So let's mess around with the trail function, which is right underneath that. This is a kind of useful thing if you want to make borders or you want to fill in an area, you want to kind of paint with a character. So now the trail function has changed drastically. The trail function used to be inside of edit mode. It used to be the F2, which is now used for the character map, which we already showed you that. But F2 to do that, and it would turn trail mode on, and it would never tell you if it was on or off. And you had to set up the character ahead of time from the edit menu right here at the T key to do it, and then you had to go back into edit mode and then hit F2 from wherever you were to engage the trail mode, and you didn't have anything telling you if it was on or off, and it was just wonky. I don't like that. And it's the only character effect that I have in Kaleidoscope that doesn't have its own screen, right? And I don't like that. So I'm going to have the trail mode in its own screen, and that's what I did. So now when you hit the trail mode, it brings up the same dialog box that you see everywhere else. That's another thing too. Most of these character effects used to have just a blank screen, and you would type in the character. It worked the same, but it just wasn't as aesthetically pleasing. So all of these now have this dialog box that comes up. So I'm going to select a light blue, I don't know, checkerboard pattern, just for random sake. And again, anywhere you see these dialog boxes, you can hit run stop and abort. It takes you right back to the edit menu. So now I am in the what looks like the editor, but I can't really type any characters. The only thing I can do is turn trail mode on and off and exit. So you see at the bottom there, it says trail mode off. And I'm just going to go over here and turn it on, and immediately it puts it right in the character, right in the space where I am. The old one used to trail behind it, which I guess lives up to its name, but it never would put it in the space where you're at. It would put it in the space you just left, which is dumb. And I didn't like it, and so I changed it. It helps when you have the source code, and there's a story behind that too. Thank you to Agent Friday and Alan Pinkerton. So now you have the trail mode, which now also allows you to wrap past the edge of the screen and in all directions. Oh no! So I'm going to hit F1, and yeah, I like it okay. Let's go back in here, edit, and we'll put this little yellow dot back there. That's easy to fix. All right, so there's more features. Can you believe it? We're still not done yet. We go to now the color function. So the colors are accessed with Control C, and the colors function is pretty advanced now. It was pretty cool in the beginning, but now it's even gotten a little better. As of yesterday, I coded a new piece for this that changes the way it operates. So let's check this out. Control C for colors. And right now, let's say I want to change all, and I want to make everything, I don't know, purple. Let's say that. Yeah, I like purple. So hit enter or return. And I want to change my letters here to purple, right? Well, that's kind of cool. It just changed my letters to purple. But look here, you see that some of the dots around the Y there, they got turned purple too. So I don't really want that to happen. Is it okay, yes or no, or pick a color? Well, let's try a different color and see if we can make it less obvious. So I can pick a color using like red or yellow. From here, I can actually just type the keys for the colors. That's something you couldn't used to do. You had to hit F1 and then select a color and then hit return, and then it would do the render, and then you'd have to do that over and over again. Now you can just randomly hit your keys. Or say you don't know where your color is on the screen, you don't know the color that you want to use. So let's go P to pick a color and cursor to the color that you want to use. Let's say we use pink. Hit return and it changes it to that color. And that's a really cool function. I love that now. And you know what? I really don't like that it's changing the color of those dots. So I'm going to hit no. And let's try a different way of changing the color. So again, with the Control C for the colors. Now we're going to seek out a color. Okay. Let's use a seek color. And again, I want to pick the color from the screen. So I can either pick it from this color bar or up here, this color, which I know it's white, but I'm just showing, I'm cursoring to here. The border changes to that color and hit return. And now the border stays that color so you know what you're changing from. And now I'm going to change it to, again, purple. Hit return. And now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to select this area. In fact, I can select this whole area because there's nothing else purple, right? Or there's nothing else white in there. And it's only going to change the white stuff to purple, and it leaves all the other stuff, that dark gray and whatever other colors are around, it only changes the white. Is it okay? Yes or no? I can, experiment with some other colors if I want to, like red, and it never changes the dark gray stuff. It just changes the white stuff. Yeah, that's okay. I like it. And then let's do the character seek again. I just want to show that one more time. Let's say we have that dot, right? That was that dot. Now it doesn't matter what color it is. We're just seeking the dot, and we're going to change it to a exclamation point, right? So let's take half of this thing and change it to exclamation points. So every place where it used to be a dot is now an exclamation point in that background. And this way I can kind of experiment with different backgrounds and stuff. And I kind of like that. So yeah, I'm gonna leave that the way it is. And now we can also change the screen color with the Control S. This is handy, like say if you want to use the black as less of a background color and more of a foreground color. Say you want to paint in black and you want to use it in the opposite way that we normally think of it as when we're using it as a black background. So you can change the screen color, and let's just change the screen color to say light green, right? And then we hit return. And you don't see it until you go into the edit mode. So now you're in the edit mode, and now you can see all those exclamation points. You can see that the screen is now light green and everything else is, now in the foreground. So we could actually paint in black if we wanted to, using black characters, right? So let's go back to the edit menu here and change the screen color black again. There we go. And let's explore another function. This is something that a lot of people didn't even know is in here, even though it's one of the most pronounced, most profound, coolest features of Kaleidoscope. And there are some other programs that have the pixel edit, but this one is the fastest. It's the best, and it's the most versatile. And Agent Friday wrote it. It used to be written entirely in BASIC, and then it was blitzed for Kaleidoscope 4. We tried to get it in Kaleidoscope 3, but sort of ran into some speed bumps there. So Pixel Edit is basically a quarter character editor. So we can now edit like with pixels in quarter characters, right? And with this one, you can use the cursor keys to move it around. and you can change the color with the color keys, right? And you just toggle the pixels on and off using the space bar. And you can also use a joystick to move around, or if you have one of those Atari trackballs, you can use that if you're pretty precise. And if you have a joystick that's got really good diagonal function, you can even draw diagonal lines really easy with this pixel editor. And it also moves really fast. It's about the fastest one that there is. So you can move from the top to the bottom of the screen in 2.9 seconds, which is kind of unheard of. And we'll just kind of create some blending colors here. And we'll kind of dither those. Now you can't dither these in between each other. You just need to know that, because if you change the color of a pixel, you're going to change the color of that entire, all 4 quadrants of that character, just so you know. So the pixel editor has a lot of potential, and you can draw in any color. Many of the characters and clip art and stuff that you see on the disc here are drawn first using this and then refined using other characters to make them look like they're higher resolution. So that is how I do a lot of my work. And Kaleidoscope 5 will have a mouse function, so this will actually be something very interesting to experiment with. I'm not sure how the mouse is gonna perform with the pixel edit, but it is definitely something that's much requested, so I'm gonna do it. And also the mouse will work with the character maps, so selecting those, and then area selection, and also drop-down menus. Instead of this edit menu that you normally see pop up in the middle of the screen, it's going to be a drop-down menu that you can move across to different menus. It'll still be the same hotkeys and F1 to access the menu if you don't have a mouse, but you can use the mouse too. F1, and yeah, let's store it. And then there's one more feature here on the main screen, and that is Control P. That's for painting. So let's say you want to paint, and you want to paint in a certain color. So let's start out right here. Paint mode now indicates whether it's on or off, and it also is going to show you what color you're painting with. So we're going to use the cyan here, and when we turn it on, it immediately turns the border that color. There we go. And let's make it light blue. Oh no. Let's make that dark gray. And then light blue. And then dark blue. There we go. So you can see how easy it is to paint whole areas. You can turn that off. And now we can go over here and paint those dark gray again. Oops. We gotta go back over here and hit cyan. And dark gray, and turn it off. And there we go. So you can see how easy it is to paint stuff with different colors and not have to redraw the characters in that color. So that makes it super simple. And you can hit F3 to undo if you want to, and it will just undo it right back to the last action. And we'll hit F1, and we're going to say, yeah, that's fine, just the way it is. So you might have noticed that there's a rainbow mode displayed there at the bottom of the menu, the F8 key. You can turn it on and off with the F8 key right from here or from the edit mode. And the reason why it's shown here, it's a pretty good reason. I've turned it on right now so I can show you. Many of the character effects that are available from the menu here actually use the rainbow mode. So the background, border, fill, the trail mode, those things will use the rainbow mode to actually cycle through the colors as they're doing their effect. So for instance, let's hit the trail mode here, and we'll select a, I don't know, yellow, probably doesn't matter what color I use, reversed pound sign, just for fun, and I'll hit return, And now you can see that as I move the cursor around, it cycles through the colors. And if I engage the trail mode and it turns it on, now it cycles through the colors as I'm moving around. So that's pretty great. And now, again, it shows whether trail mode is on or off. And there we go. So that's your rainbow mode working. And we can hit F1 and say, no, let's not store. Let's merge in some graphics from one of the clip art files. I promised I would show you some of that. So, oh yeah, it's showing the disk or tape function thing here. So I want to show you something here, and we'll use the run stop to abort. You can use disk or tape here, or you can also disable that from the DOS menu, just like I showed you before. Change the default device. Yes, I want to make it 8. Insert the Kaleidoscope disk into device 8. Now previously we had deleted the default device thing, so it's writing it to the disk right now. It's done. Now we can go to merge, and it just asks us the file name. So that's pretty great, right? And let's type in miscellaneous2.gfx. And this is just one of the many graphics files that's included in the disk. I've seen that little pickle guy on a number of graphics. And then here you'll be able to see it scrolling. And I'm not really sure what the torque thing is about. I made that, but I'm not sure why. All right, so I think there's some graphics on the top of this phone. Let's pick that up and merge that in to our graphic here. Just put that there, and like we're gonna make a BBS screen or something, I don't know. Yes, yeah, we're done with that one. Let's do computer1.gfx. There's a bunch of computer clip art. I used to be a graphics op for a bunch of BBSs, so I made a bunch of handy clip art for computer stuff for BBSs. There we go. Got a 64 there. Hey, that's the one from the intro screen. There we go. And got a kind of cool little monitor guy. I like him. Let's do that. Let's bring up the monitor guy first. There we go. And we'll put him over here. And yeah, no, we're not all done. And let's grab the 64. Oops, I grabbed the wrong thing there. It's okay, we can get rid of it. Oops, F3 to undo. Love that undo function. There we go. And F1 exit, yes, and we're all done. And I'm gonna move that, move. There we go. Move this little Commodore thing right over here in front of the monitor. Yeah, that's fine. Yes, and move the little monitor guy over to center him better. There we go. Perfect. I like it. Yes, edit that and erase this bottom thing here. And we're still in rainbow mode. So just as it happens to be handy, we'll just call this Bryce's, oops, BBS, oops, BBS. Yeah, and you kind of can't see that. But anyway, you get the idea. So now that we've got a graphic made, let's just edit. And now the last thing that's on this menu that you haven't seen, and that is store. So we're going to store this. Now the reason why we have to store it is because right now it's just a bunch of screen memory, just peeks and pokes on the screen. And we're going to take all that and convert it into lines of PETSCII that can be transferred to a BBS. So we hit the S key for store, and we have the option of changing the spaces to cursor rights, which is handy if you're doing like overlays or something. Like if you got graphics that you're going to put into an animator or something and you want to overlay it on top of something, that's handy, and we've done it before. But in this case, we're just doing a screen, so no, we're not going to change it to cursor rights. Again, we have the option to hit run stop to abort. But we also have this other question: do we want to cut off extra lines? So you see that at the bottom of the screen, there's a bunch of blank lines. And what it will do is it will just basically erase those last lines so that we don't have a bunch of blank lines taking up our space. It also truncates the ends of the lines inward so that we're not transmitting characters that don't have to be transmitted. And in that way, it is sort of dissimilar to some other graphics editors. Originally, it didn't do that, but we made it so that it doesn't transfer files that, or it doesn't transfer characters that, doesn't need to store characters that it's not actually doing anything with. Cut off extra lines. Yes. And so this takes a few seconds. It's actually maybe 8 to 10 seconds faster than the 1989 version in storing. I tried to write it as streamlined as possible. I got a lot of the math a lot simplified and streamlined some of the processes that it does. So that it actually only does one pass now. So it's a few seconds faster than it used to be. And the load and save stuff is much, much faster. So from here, you can hit D to display what you have in here. And of course, you can save it to the disk. And if I go save to disk, it would always ask me disk or tape, but I've already changed the default device, right? So it's only going to use the default device now. Are you sure? Yes. And we'll call this test 1, right? And you'll notice right away that it saves much faster than it used to. Much, much faster. All the disk access stuff, see, it's already done. It's almost like you're doing it in an emulator, warped or something. And just to load something, let's try loading in another one of the graphic files, people.gfx. And this graphic is longer than 23 lines, so you wouldn't normally see past 23 lines. So it cuts that off a little bit. And again, being a bigger file, it still loads pretty fast. See, it's already done. And we can display that file there. So that's one of the graphic files that you can grab those things and use them in your stuff. And so now we've done load and save. If we wanted to redo, we have the option of doing a new picture or abort, right? If we abort, we still retain the whole thing. But if we hit new picture, it's going to go into the editor like from scratch, like before. So that's the redo key. Remember that, redo. And now we're going to use the exfer, the transfer. This is where you start getting into where you can create graphics that are longer than 23 lines. You can create graphics up to 75 lines in the program itself. That doesn't include appending to files on disks. So using the exfer function, we have, at first, we have the option, as long as we don't have anything in the buffer yet, to replace the entire buffer with the screen memory. So that means taking whatever's in the buffer. Right now there's nothing, but it becomes the 23 lines that we've stored in the screen. And of course it's less than that because we opted to cut off the extra lines, right? So let's replace the entire buffer with the screen memory, right? And yes, I'm sure this says it'll wipe out everything that's in the 75 line buffer and put the screen into the buffer. Yes. So now if I hit Control D and I display what's in the buffer, it says I have space to pause, run stop to abort. And of course the printing is much faster than it used to be in the old version because we have an interrupt routine that cancels out all of the insert mode and quote mode stuff. So you don't have to worry about inserts and quotes. Much, much faster displaying. It used to be really slow. So now if I want to exfer again, the option comes up now to append to the end of the buffer. So I can add what I have into the end of the buffer, or I can place it elsewhere in the buffer. So I'm just going to go append. Do I want to append the screen memory to the end of the buffer? Yes. Now when I hit Control D, it's going to show the same thing twice, right? Because I just added it onto itself, right? Now, there's another option here, X, to place elsewhere in the buffer. Yes. Do I want to list with line numbers? If I don't, then it'll just list it. So we'll list it with line numbers, and we can see precisely where I want to place it. I'm thinking like line 12, right? So if I place it over line 12, it should like theoretically cover some of the first copy and some of the last copy, right? And I'm going to say list again. No. List again. Place screen at line number. We're going to say 13. Want to preview it? Yes. And you have the opportunity to preview it and see how it looks first. Yeah, that's exactly how I wanted it to look. Right? Yes, it's okay. And now I can display it, and it's going to show it just the way that we did that. So now that's basically most of the options here. And then if I wanted to append to a disk file, so let's say that I want to append the buffer file. Control A to append. Yes. Test1. Now you see the disk light up. And of course it's going to be pretty fast. It's already done. So now if I go to the DOS menu, I can read that file, test1. Now reading a sequential file to the screen is a little bit slower, a lot slower actually. So remember, this was a graphic that we put together earlier, the little Bryce's BBS screen. And so right after the Commodore there, it's going to start with the next thing because we cut off the extra lines, remember? So now it's going to display all the rest of the stuff that we just put together. Remember, we cut it off at line 13 there. And it's just appended it onto the end of the disk. You're basically unlimited except for disk space. You can just keep appending to the disk. There we go. Hit return. And we're all done. And after we do that, we're going to exit that. And that's basically how everything works. Appending to the disk, both with the buffer and the editor. You can do both of those. You can append to the disk. And then importing. We're going to import a file. So we've got another file that I want to bring in, but if we load it in, I'll show you. Like, I'm just going to load this Tetris file. So I've got this great Tetris animation file that I like to show off the animator with. Okay, we are back at the main screen, and now when we go to display it, you're going to see it's going to be a little wacky here. So it just messes up the whole graphic there. And this is actually part of the necessity for the import function that I was telling you about. So this file was created with Kaleidoscope Animator. It was never meant to be displayed on the regular Kaleidoscope screen like this. But there is a purpose and a function for being able to load files in from other editors or animations or things into Kaleidoscope. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this import function here. Yes, and we're going to take a look at Tetris. So what Tetris is going to do is it's going to play back on the screen. And this is actually a graphic that my friend Captain Kemby made he actually graphed this out on graph paper first, and he put all these little characters. He made actual block characters of Tetris pieces like you would normally see in the game to scale, and then started plotting them like what it would take to make the word Tetris appear out of Tetris pieces. Took him forever. And then he did it, and then he animated them falling using Kaleidoscope Animator. So it's pretty slick. It's pretty slow bringing it onto the screen. But you'll notice that when it gets past all this, it's still going to stop at 23 lines because that's all that the editor can handle, because it's got the status line at the bottom, and we didn't want to deal with any of the line feeds and scrolling stuff. So that will not be an issue with Kaleidoscope 5, because Kaleidoscope 5 is going to have a completely different loading system, and it will have a 100-line buffer. So it will be 100 lines of scrolling editor, completely different. So now that we're done, now it's going to store it just like we stored our previous graphic. After we made the whole thing, we stored the whole thing into lines of characters. And so that's what it's doing right now. It'll be done in just a couple seconds. And then once it's done, we can just display it, and it shows it just straight up line by line. And this way you can import graphics that maybe don't work so well just loading them in. So like the Centronian BBS graphic, you can actually load that in properly and display that, and boom, there we are. We have the Tetris graphic, and it's 39 columns across, and it is 23 lines deep. That gives you an idea of what we have in store for Kaleidoscope Reloaded. This is the program. This is it. This is the finished thing. And when I'm done with it, it's going to have a demo intro thanking all the beta testers, all the people who helped out with all of the contributing beta testers. So if you're just a person that signed up for the beta and you downloaded the program and you've been sitting there at home enjoying it, great for you. But those people who have contributed, like Alterus, Chris537, Stiggity99, Agent Friday, of course, who's not only a tester, but he's also like one of the authors, wrote the quarter character routine. Then Jeff Hogue, all these people, they're going to get shout outs in this demo. And I have some other perks to come for Kaleidoscope 5. So for those of you that want to stay tuned, Kaleidoscope 5 is going to be a completely next generation PETSCII editor. If you guys remember, there was an old program written by a friend of mine, Kelly Etheridge, back in the 80s. It was called Picture Perfect. And Picture Perfect had a 100-line scrolling buffer. And I always thought that that would be just great and killer to put together. Well, Jeff Hogue has put that together for Kaleidoscope. And so Kaleidoscope version 5 will do away with the whole 23-line, 75-line buffer gizmo. It's going to be completely different. We will just have the edit menu, and from the edit menu, all of the DOS functions, all of the editing functions, all of that stuff is going to be available right from the edit menu. Loading, saving, append, all that stuff is going to be right from the edit menu. And you'll be able to pick up a stamp right from one end of the screen and scroll up to another spot and stamp everywhere in between. You'll be able to flip it, mirror it, and rotate. So Jeff has written a routine to take your graphics and rotate them 90 degrees or 180 degrees. We're going to make it so you're just going to, your mind is going to go, I'm serious. I cannot wait to even start working on Kaleidoscope 5 because it's going to be amazing to use. As soon as I get a working beta, I'm going to be like making graphics like a madman. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I hope that you'll click that subscribe button up there or over here on the eye thing, you know, wherever it shows up. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this super stinking long video of Kaleidoscope Reloaded. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I'll make another video outlining the history of Kaleidoscope because for me, like I say, it's more than just a program. It's a story. and I hope that you'll enjoy that as well. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye bye.